Hello and welcome back. We're continuing today with the theme from our last discussion that this never happened, none of this ever happened, and because it never happened, it cannot be difficult. And it's not. Hence the title of our discussion for today. So, what are we even suggesting by that? Well, the separation never took place. This is the essence of our accepting atonement for ourselves, which is what we're invited to do. To accept atonement for ourselves. Now, atonement in A Course in Miracles is the correction of the Holy Spirit, the correction of our perception by our inner teacher. We see ourselves as separate. We see other people, therefore our brother, as separate. We see everything as a separate individual unit. Yet, in truth, that is not the way it is. It's not true. It's not accurate. It's illusion. There is only perfect oneness, and the essence of our accepting the correction of our inner teacher for ourselves is the acknowledgement that the separation never occurred. Therefore, the ego never occurred. So what never occurred cannot be difficult. It's simple. It's not difficult. So why do we make it so difficult? That's the question, isn't it? So as we wrap up this section of the text today, we're in the final three paragraphs. Now, I'm referring specifically to chapter 6, section 2, the alternative to projection. We're in paragraphs 11 through 13 here today with this discussion. So as we wrap it up, the alternative to projection is the Holy Spirit, your inner teacher. That's the alternative to projection. And we see here that the ego is fully able to accept the idea that return is necessary. Return where? Home, so to speak. Return to our awareness, to our knowledge of God, heaven, if you want to call it that, which, by the way, is not a place. It is not a pearly gate. There is no castle in the conventional sense of the word, because that would imply that there's something outside of the castle, right? A gate fences things out as well as in. That's a separation idea, isn't it? A garden under which rivers flow is also a separation idea, because that implies that there's something outside the garden. Heaven is not a place, then. It is the awareness of perfect oneness. The awareness of perfect oneness. It's knowing God. That's what it is. So the ego can accept that our return to this state of awareness is certainly possible. It can accept this idea because it can make it seem difficult. The ego can make our return home, if you want to call it that, seem difficult. It can make awakening seem difficult and far out in the future. Here we see time as a clear separation idea. The ego uses it to place our awakening so far out in the future that we despair in the present moment of ever attaining it, of ever awakening, because it seems impossible, impossibly long in time. The ego can use, and it does use, the idea that return is necessary to obstruct our return. What else? To make it seem so hard, to make these very simple ideas seem so difficult. And conditioned as we are to listen to the voice of the ego, we buy it. We do. We buy into it and we see things as a lengthy, lengthy process when in reality it does not have to be that way. We're talking about the present moment and only that, and the choice that we can make for God right now. Right now. It's said on the spiritual path, who knows when enlightenment will occur? Well, we don't. But if we leave it up to the ego, we'll never get there because it will always seem impossibly far out, distant into the future, and so complicated. There's nothing inherently complicated about the idea that there is no world. There's nothing inherently complicated about the idea that God is, and nothing else is. Who are you? You're part of God. That's not complicated. You're one with God. That's not complicated. Ideas leave not their source. That's not complicated, right? None of these ideas is at all complicated. They're not intended to be complicated. Jesus, in dictating this course for us, is not hiding the ball. It's the ego that's hiding it. So when we side with the ego, we think that all of this needs to be so complex. There's only perfect oneness. That's not complex. So why do we make it so? Because we do. Otherwise, we wouldn't need this video. Would we? We wouldn't need this course because we'd be where we always have been and still are, awake in God. We wouldn't need any of this. It would be completely unnecessary. But here in the world where we complicate everything, this is necessary. And the repetition of these ideas is 100% necessary so that we may train our mind. We're seeing things incorrectly. So we accept the correction of our inner teacher. That's what this is all about. So because this supposed separation never happened, it can't be difficult. It's not difficult. The ego wishes to make it so. And when we listen to the ego, it seems difficult. It's not difficult. Accept atonement for yourself. Allow truth to be just as it is. This is a very powerful prayer. If you're not in the habit of saying this and thinking this on the path, this is something that is valuable. It's highly valuable. And in my own practice, I've found it to be very, very effective and uplifting, frankly. It's the simplicity of this idea. Help me to allow truth to be just as it is. Help me allow truth to be just as it is. What is implicit in this is very potent and very important. It's powerful because we're allowing truth simply to be. We're not attempting to interpose all of our ridiculous layers of complication upon it. We're not making it more than it is, and certainly we're not lessening it. We're not making it a thing into which we subdivide and parse it out into multiple little divisions and subdivisions and categories to the point where we pretty much confuse the shit out of ourselves, to put it rather mildly and bluntly, both. We become dazed and confused. Talk about frustrating. It doesn't have to be that way. This need not be. It doesn't have to be that way. We can accept the power, the love, the sheer simplicity of truth just as it is. Very powerful. So, how do we do it? Well, under the guidance of your inner teacher, we listen to the guidance of your inner teacher. And as we're learning to perceive things truly, we perceive our brother as separate from us. The opposite of that, the helpful way to perceive our brother, the real way to perceive our brother, is as one with us, as the Son of God, as God's creation, which is one with God himself. So when you look at your brother, you're not looking at a separate being. You're looking at God himself, not the body and not all the crap that your brother's doing. He might be spewing hatred on social media. He may have flipped you off on the freeway, and he may have a big scowl on his face or her face. She might be having an absolute tirade. Maybe this person is screaming at you or at someone else. They don't appear in the present moment to be loving, but we're invited to look beyond that. They are God's creation. And as we see our brother as the Son of God, we see ourselves as the Son of God. This is the way the Holy Spirit sees us. He doesn't see the division and all of the endless distractions that we worship here in the world. He doesn't see any of that. So he's guiding us and teaching us to see things as they are. One with God means one with God. Your brother is one with God. And so are you. So am I. So is your ex. So is your worst political enemy. So is the most bloody historical dictator. All of us. One. We're invited to see this. And we see it by extending love, by extending the miracle, by forgiving the Son of God. In this process, we learn to perceive truly. And there's never been any separation. This is part of the attitude of true forgiveness, is that there's never been any separation. There's no separation of any kind. Your brother didn't do anything to you because he or she is not a separate actor. And neither are you a separate being upon whom he acts or flips off or says mean, nasty things to, whatever the case may be. So as we learn to perceive truly, we restore our communication with God. The Holy Spirit helps us to do that. He's our communication link with God. It's part of our mind. This allows us to simply let truth be as it is and allows our mind to merge with God's in direct communication. We learn to see things as they truly are. Now, the number one obstacle that we find here is making too much of these teachings. Now, granted, they can be quite shocking. It can be quite shocking indeed to hear, especially for the first time, that there is no world. It could be shocking, perhaps it has been for you, to learn that you're not a body. I'm not a body. I am free. Lesson 199. There is no death. The Son of God is free. Another lesson from the workbook. Of course, there's no death. You're not a body. These ideas can certainly shock you. They can be challenging, and perhaps you accepted them very easily, and that's great. But when you encounter what seem to be difficulties on the path or fear, it's the ego inviting you to return to your semi-comfortable little couch, which we discover is not really comfortable. We want to get up. That's why we're here paying any attention to spirituality at all, isn't it? Because we deep down know that this is true. All of these ideas are true. So how do we discover that for ourselves? In essence, how do we prove it? Right? How do we prove this to ourselves? Forgive the Son of God. Your experience will show you. Do the course, and your experience will show you that these ideas are true. It is not enough merely to understand these teachings on an intellectual, so-called rational thinking basis. It's about practical application. All of spirituality, all of it, is about practical application. It is. It's about experience, because God can simply be known. In other words, experienced. We can't theorize our way to waking up. Yes, it's important to understand some of these ideas, but this is the number one obstacle that most course students run into, is attempting to make these ideas complicated, over complication, overthinking with the rational thinking mind, and attempting to understand all of this on an intellectual level before you even forgive one tiny thing. And that is not the best way to go about it. If you don't understand all of these ideas, that's okay. You can certainly understand the simplicity of them, that you're one with God, and that practice here in the world involves forgiving, true forgiveness. It involves overlooking illusion. It involves practical application. This is about allowing truth to be as it is, which we all yearn to do. In listening to the call of our inner teacher, we're responding to a deep yearning. It could rightly be said to be ancient, long-standing. We're responding to this call. And you're responding to it just by watching this, just by thinking about A Course in Miracles at all. You're answering the call. So we learn to see all of God's creations as perfect. Quite simply that. We're learning to perceive truly. And when we perceive truly, knowledge is restored. It's said here in the Course that God takes the final step himself, and we're awake. We're at home, so to speak, in God, where we've never left. Again, the idea that we repeated a lot in the last video, that ideas leave not their source, seems a great way to wrap this discussion up. It's not difficult. None of this is difficult. You've never left your source. Allow this. Accept this. Accept atonement for yourself. Accept the correction of your inner teacher for yourself, the essence of which being the separation never occurred. What never occurred cannot be difficult. It never occurred, never happened. And in our accepting this lies tremendous power. It's your power. It's not yours alone, but it's yours. It's shared with God. All right. Which means it's shared with all of us too. Because who are we? Yeah, one with means one with. That's a simple idea, isn't it? All right. So thank you very much for tuning in to this and all of the videos here. It's a pleasure to have you here with us. We've got a growing international community, and there are people here from all over the world. By the way, here is the subscription button. That's the red arrow in the corner of your screen here. And if you've not subscribed, please do so. We'd love to have you. And please feel welcome to ask any questions or leave any comments that you have here. This is intended to be a forum for discussion. So if you've got questions, please feel welcome to leave them. Studying this material will bring up stuff. By design, all of spirituality is designed to get us to look at our illusion and let it go, which means allowing it to rise to conscious awareness and finding it completely lacking, completely wanting, and letting it go because it's not what you want. What do you want? Well, deep down, we all want exactly the same thing, the peace of God. So let's cultivate, actively cultivate wanting that and only that. All right. Thank you for joining me. I will talk to you soon.